Imagine owning your own 10 acres of land like this, or like this. Eating steak from Wagyu beef grown in your backyard. Raw milk from your own A2 Jersey cows. Pork from your own Iberico pigs. Cheese from your own milking goats. And eggs from your own chickens. Now I know what you're thinking. It's impossible. The closest you've ever come to raising your own animals is raising your own dog. How in the world can you have a lifestyle like this while running your own business and raising your family? But here's the thing. Owning land like this is not impossible. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how to buy your own 10 acres of land, start your own profitable regenerative ranch, and build the off-grid family compound of your dreams without giving up your business or sacrificing your career to become a full-time farmer. So stick with me to the end, because I'm not only gonna show you how to take the impossible to the possible, I'm gonna show you how to do it while saving hundreds of thousands of dollars and decades of headaches.
Running away is easy. It's the leaving that's hard.
Welcome to the ultimate guide to buying land and building an off-grid family compound as a business owner in 2025 and beyond. The title of this video is not clickbait. By the end of this video, you will have everything you need to know to start your own regenerative family compound with 10 or more acres of land, 2 or more homes for you, your friends, and your family, and 100% off-grid solar, septic, and well water systems, as well as a regenerative farm that produces your own meat, milk, and eggs from Wagyu cows, Iberico pork, dairy cows, and pasture-raised chickens, all while raising your kids around people who share your values without quitting your business, becoming a full-time farmer, or spending $5 to $10 million trying to do it all alone. Now you might ask, who am I? Well, my name is TJ Visude, and I am a husband, father, and the CEO and founder of Axie Centralized Real Estate, the Ranch Hand League, Wanted Raw Foods, and Axe Homes and Construction. Together, my companies form an ecosystem that helps families of all backgrounds build profitable, turnkey family compounds starting with just 10 acres of land. In our first year of operation, we have helped celebrities, business owners, professionals, disabled veterans, grandparents, new parents, single parents, Jews, blacks, Hispanics, professional ranchers, and complete and total newbies. There's no such thing as one surface level trait that describes the families that we are able to help start their own regenerative family compounds, other than one thing that cuts very deep. All of the families we help want freedom. All of the families we help want land, and all of the families we help want a better future for their family, and they feel a calling by God to help their family. So we knew they needed help, and we provided a solution the same way that I had wished for a solution when I first started everything. So why should you listen to me? Well, it's because we've helped over 50 families become landowners. So you can see some of the families here for our Texas property. It's because we've helped over 20 families become farmers despite having zero experience. Families like the Dixons here. We've had families plant malanga, dasheen, yucca, avocado, mangoes, lychee trees, jackfruit, papaya trees on their land, and we paid out thousands of dollars to our first franchise owners. Everything that used to be a theory is no longer a theory. People have actually gotten paid out. You can see that our food brand now has a large following. People are not only eating some of the food, we're actually producing so much food that we're selling it. And people are having barbecues with their families. These are pork chops that come from our land. So again, everything we're talking about is not theory, it is reality. So how does our process work and how do all of our companies work together? Well, first off, we gather like-minded families together in different states across the country, as well as even internationally. From there, we go out and we, as a group, buy the best 500-acre ranches in the world, subdivide them, and sell them as 10-acre parcels of land with the option to install profitable regenerative farms on each parcel and build as many 100% off-grid homes as you'd like on each parcel. So why should you bother listening to me? Well, beyond the success we've had with our families, I know you better than you might know yourself, at least when it comes to this one topic. How can I say that? Well, I've been at this for the last 4 years, answering questions, seeing the fears, seeing the doubts, seeing the anxiety of people from across the country. My videos have been viewed over 15 million times. We've gathered over 240,000 followers on Instagram. We've had over 50,000 submissions to our website, and we have 1,700 members in our online forum. So from all of those people submitting things, asking questions, writing the DMs, I see patterns and I see the mistakes. And even then, we've been able to help out families. So this right here is our first property. It's called Little G Ranch. It's 492 acres that we turned into 40 parcels. And by the time we're watching this video is going to be completely sold out. This is Panoplia Ranch. It's 1,135 acres that we turned into 100 parcels and is now 25% sold out. This is Creo Ranch. It's 922 acres that we have officially subdivided into 140 parcels. And by the time we're watching this, will be available. And this is Telios Ranch over in California, 640 acres that we're turning into 50 parcels. So let's look at what the steps are to own a regenerative family compound and what it is that we have to do to navigate this process. You're gonna have to find a parcel of land, vet it, negotiate on it, finance it, and close on it, then study farming, buy equipment for your farm, find livestock, pay for feed, start a food brand, market the food, sell the food at the market, deliver it to customers successfully, map out your parcel, design your home, build your home, and install fully off-grid utilities. Every single one of these can be an entire person's career, but we've taken all these steps and we've simplified them, and I'd like to show you how we simplified them. So when we look at this whole endeavor, trying to make our own family compounds, there is one mistake that I see people make all the time, and that mistake is going it alone. Every single person must go through certain milestones. And unfortunately, there are so many of these milestones, so many steps that you have to take that the whole process is incredibly confusing. I'm going to eliminate that confusion for you today. But if you try to go all these steps on your own, you're going to be wasting a lot of time and a lot of money because each step is very time intensive and very expensive. In fact, each step could literally be a person's entire career. And if you make any mistakes along the way, you're cooked. This means that in order to successfully create a regenerative family compound like what I'm going to show you today, you would have to have the skills of over 20 career people to navigate the process on your own. That is the real reason why 0.05% of the population is successfully able to go off grid and start their own homestead. And yet, even if you did try to do it on your own, you'd still end up paying retail prices. So I'm going to show you how to avoid having to pay retail prices by the end of this video. So what is our big secret? Well, it's the power in numbers. When you use the power in numbers, every single one of the steps involved in this 16-step process that most people have to go through is 10 to 100 times easier. Some of the steps, in fact, that give people the biggest headaches and waste the most time can be completely gone when you use the power numbers like what I'm going to show you today. So not only can you get past headaches, you can also get better pricing. So usually where you have to choose between speed, quality, and price, and most people like to say, hey, speed, quality, price, pick two. With the power numbers, you can have all three. Let me give you a little example of what I'm talking about just looking at land, all right? So these are real examples of properties that exist in Murray County, Tennessee. If you try to buy land in Murray County, Tennessee, then alone, land might be $250,000 for a 5-acre parcel due to supply and demand. This area is a very in-demand area. There's very low supply, so more and more people are raising the prices up. Just imagine if you have one good parcel of land that pops up that has cleared trees, a nice location, has everything that you'd want, there might be 40 families who might bid on that one parcel of land. Well, there's only going to be one winner, so you're going to have 39 losers in that scenario. And worse, when you have that one winner paying more, then that sets the comparables for all other parcels of land in that area. So all of a sudden, not only do you have 39 losers, those 39 losers now have to continue fighting, but for land that is even more expensive. So let's now ask what happens when those 40 families decide to work together using the power numbers. Well, if we have 40 families and they each had a budget of $250,000, then you would have a $10 million budget. If you have a $10 million budget, then you can go out and you can look at the most premium land in the entire area. Land that has a better location, has better features, better everything. And yet, it will be at a lower price per acre because of supply and demand. See, at lower parcel sizes, there are more people who can afford those parcels. Therefore, the amount of demand goes upwards. But at higher volume land, there are fewer people who can afford that land, and therefore the price per acre goes down significantly. So you end up with the best land and the best price. So where land might be $255,000 normally in Middle Tennessee, it might only be $150,000 with Axe because we use the power numbers. And by the way, this is not a theoretical example. This is a very real example. This is literally exactly what happened in Middle Tennessee. So with this in mind, I want to give you a 12-month roadmap starting today for what's possible if you follow through with everything I'm showing you in this video. In the next 1 to 3 months, I want you to join our forum, do your research, and schedule a visit to see one of our properties in person. Then, in months 3 to 6, you can choose your parcel and get financing. Once you close on your parcel, you can start your own farm and start farming through our franchise system. And finally, in months 9 to 12, if you follow through everything I'm talking about here, you can move into your own fully operational off-grid family compound with food sales already operational. That's entirely what is possible, regardless of the amount of time you have outside of work or the amount of experience you currently have. Let's start off by talking about how to find land and get financing to close on that land. In this section, I want to show you 4 things. Number 1, how we find land that you can't find anywhere else. Number 2, how we filter properties to prevent hidden traps. Number 3, how we outbid $120 million investment funds for the best properties and negotiate things on our terms. And number 4, how we strong arm banks for unreal financing terms. Let's start off by talking about how we find land you can't find anywhere else. The biggest mistake most people make is looking on Zillow, land.com, or other mainstream marketplaces to find land. The problem with this strategy is that these properties on those websites are going to be offered at retail prices, so they're often not the best deals. Our secret is that we leverage our network to get off-market deals. In other words, these are deals that literally do not appear in the MLS, and you can only get them by knowing someone who knows someone about it. We have a 240,000 follower network that sends us deals every single week. So our team vets these deals for quality, and once we find the best deals, we show them to people on our Mighty Network, which you can join for free. So that's the big secret on how we find land. We find off-market properties and off-market deals that you can't find anywhere else. Here's a great example of what I'm talking about. This is a real email that I actually screenshotted, and it's for our Costa Rica deal. Hey, TJ, thanks for the quick reply on IG. The gentleman had commented, hey, would you like to partner? And he tells me, I have a 560-acre paradise under contract in Costa Rica, amazing topography, one river and 6 streams running through it, mountain views 1 hour from the beaches of Uvita and Dominical, fertile soil and perfect altitude for living comfortably, raising livestock and growing all sorts of tropical fruits and spices. Would love to connect and explore how we could potentially work together. This email then turned into this property that we're now making available. This property was once owned by the Minister of Agriculture in Costa Rica. In other words, this is a 10 out of 10 impossible find for most people if they try to do something alone. But for us in our system, this is another week. This is just normal. This is what we see all the time. So now let's talk about how we filter properties to prevent hidden traps once we do find a good opportunity. The mistake that most people make is trying to do all the research on their own. For example, it might take you 50 to over 100 hours to research one property. And by the time that happens, someone else can place a bid on it. We have a system, however, for vetting properties based on 6 key qualities, and we have a 6-person team to review those properties based on these qualities. So whenever we find a property, we're going to, number one, look at the location of that property. The location has to make sense. We look at the beauty and the aesthetics of that property. It's very important to have proper beauty and aesthetics, especially for something that's going to be of this quality. You look at the fertility of the land. So we have our ranch management team look at the fertility of the grasses and the soils. Then we look at the usability of the land. We have our landscape architects look at how they would best install roads and add houses to the land itself. Then we look at the economics of the property to make sure that it's going to be a good price, that it's a great deal for everybody involved. And finally, we have a specialist that looks at the legalities of that property to ensure that there are minimal, if at zero building restrictions or building permits that are necessary in order to build out on that land. So not only can we perform better research using this system than a person can on their own, we can do it for more properties faster, because where it might take a person 50, 100 hours, it's not a big deal for our team members to spend 1 hour each within their zone of genius. And because it's what they do, it's part of their career, they can assess stuff much faster and much more accurately. So here's a perfect example of what I'm talking about, all right? So this is a gorgeous piece of land, right? It was a great deal. Most people would have bid on this deal. And to be honest, I mean, I love the property, but there's a huge glaring issue with it. Can you tell what it is? Well, you can't, because it was buried deeply in the fine print while we were in the middle of the negotiation for this property. We had gotten the property under contract, but we had something called an option period, which means that we're able to pull out of the deal. And during that option period where we could pull out of the deal, we found buried in the fine print that there was a mineral lease that would allow major, huge companies to come in and drill on the land. And there was no way of telling exactly where it would be they would start drilling. If we were to move forward with this property, it would have been like playing Minesweeper and having a mine somewhere in someone's backyard. But because our team was able to do due diligence on it, we're able to find this and appropriately say, hey, let's filter this out. Let's move on this deal at another time. So now let's talk about how we negotiate terms. If you try to negotiate on a land deal alone, most sellers might not take you seriously, or you might get outbid by larger players. Our secret is that we deploy cash from our Angels program to lock down properties faster than anyone else. And so you might be asking, well, what is the Angels program? Well, Angels are a little bit like angel investors for startups, right? They help you start up new companies, but in this case, they help us start up new properties. So angels dedicate funds before we've even found a new property in the first place. And they do it by providing a soft commitment. All a soft commitment is a little application that says, hey, I'd be willing to put up money assuming we find a good property. From there, the angels go with us on property visits. And once we find a property that we like, we gather up the funds from the angels, they wire the funds in, and we negotiate terms and place an offer on the properties that we would like to move forward with. By placing money into earnest money deposits, we can secure properties with better terms than usual because we're saying, hey, we would like to give you this amount of money up front, and we would like to lock in the terms for the next 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, next year, however long we want. And we'll tell them, if we aren't able to follow through and close, then you get to keep that money. So here's a great example how we outbid a $120 million fund in order to acquire Panoplia, our Florida property. This property is gorgeous. Again, it's 1,135 acres with 100 parcels and 22 man-made lakes on it that get water from the road engineering that redirects rainwater into them. These ponds, on average, they're about 5 million gallons per pond. And again, there's 22 of them. So anyways, we found the property. It was already subdivided. It was ready to go. But there was a huge investment fund that had already placed an offer on that property by the time we looked at it. So we'd gathered funds. We'd gathered $850,000 within 2 days from our angels, and we were able to place an offer on the property saying, hey, if we're not able to close, then you get to keep the $850,000. Now, the investment fund would have never been able to make that move because they have their investors, they're beholden to a lot of other rules. They can't play the game nearly as fast or nearly as risky as what we can do. And that is how we're able to negotiate better terms that give us a longer amount of time to vet the property and make sure everything is set up correctly. So now let's talk about how we actually close on land. Once we have a property under contract, we then gather saints. So again, there are angels who help us place an earnest money deposit, and then there are saints. Saints are families that are expected to close at the same time that we close on the larger property. And again, where angels will help us place an earnest money deposit for the property, saints sign up to purchase the property on the designated closing date, all at the same time. Now, the cool thing about being a saint is that for you on your end, it's a normal real estate transaction. There is no fundamental difference whatsoever in being a saint versus a normal retail buyer just buying a piece of land. But for our end, we're mitigating all of the different saints at the same time so that we can move forward with the close on a parcel of land. So let's look at this step by step. Step one, we'll find land and we'll vet it and we'll negotiate a deal on it, and we'll let angels know about whatever deal we have coming up. Step two, the angels place an earnest money deposit on the land. And for angels, every $1 they put in becomes a $2 credit that they can use on their choice of land at a market value or on a franchise. And we'll talk more about what franchises are later, but they are done for you farms. After we have the property locked down with the earnest money deposit and it's under contract, we then line up all the saints to close with us at the same time. Now, why would a person become a saint? Well, it's because if you are a saint, you get $25,000 off of your franchise if you use financing, or $50,000 off your franchise if you use cash. From there, we reach the close date and everybody closes at the same time. Whatever remaining parcels are there are then sold at the retail prices. So again, early buyers with us receive huge discounts. All right, next, do you get to own your land outright? The answer is yes. You fully own the deed to your parcel of land when you use the system that I'm talking about. I've seen systems where you don't actually own land. For example, REITs, where they go out and they buy land as a group and they now have an LLC, and all you are is you're a 1% owner or 2% owner of the LLC that owns the land, and they try to map your 1 or 2% ownership to the specific parcel of land. That is not what I'm talking about here whatsoever. With the process that I'm showing you here today, you own your deed to your land, not a company, not a percentage interest. You own the deed to your land outright, period. So now let's talk about financing, and specifically how we strong arm banks for unreal financing terms. See, banks hate financing off-grid deals, so most people either cannot find financing whatsoever or do so with awful 35 to 50% down loans. That's a lot of money if we're talking about a $250,000 parcel of land. However, we leverage the power in numbers to strong arm banks by presenting our customers in bulk. If banks don't work with us, we threaten to go to their competition, which makes them look silly. And because of this, we can provide suggestions for loans that go as low as 20% down and even 10% down on rural land, which I assure you, if you understand this market, that's like a unicorn, all right? You don't find 10% down adjustable rate mortgages on land normally. That is, it's a once in a lifetime type of thing. So here's an actual text conversation that we have, and you can see an actual loan officer saying, hey, I'm not giving up. I'm going to call senior management on Friday after we close. So here's a great example of one of our families, and they closed. This, you can't really tell it based off of the ratio of the image, but this is actually a 16-foot tall cross that one of the families put on their parcel of land after they closed on it. Now, the best thing about this is that it was exactly what I'm talking about put into place to a T. So there was a credit union that we were working with that was skeptical of funding our deals because we offer fully off-grid parcels. However, when the loan officer pointed out to senior management the huge loss that would occur if we were to take our business to their competition, the bank actually changed around their terms and said, you know what, we will fund this deal. So again, if you had been a single person going over to the bank to try to get this term, it would have not happened. And they did, in fact, try to turn away our customers in the middle of their approval process. But because we explained to them that they would be exposed and that they would lose all 100 customers and all 100 parcels that we had available, they instantly changed their tune. That's, again, what happens when you use the power in numbers. So let's talk a little bit about what it takes to get financing, because I assure you, the hardest part of this entire process is just getting the financing. If you make it past this step that I'm showing you right here, right now, because you paid attention, then everything else will be downhill from here. Everything else is incredibly easy. So what do you need in order to get financing? Well, at the very top of it, you need to understand two things about the banks and how they're going to be looking at you. Number one, they're going to be looking at you to figure out how likely you are to pay off your mortgage. Number two, they're going to be trying to figure out how much value is in the asset that they're loaning on and figuring out if they have to repossess it, what that value would be in that asset. So again, they're asking, will you pay off the loan? And if you don't pay off the loan and I have to recoup it, can I at least sell it and break even? So when it comes to getting financing, I want you to think of it like a legal case. You are presenting evidence in the legal case, and you want to make it beyond a reasonable doubt that you are A, going to pay back the loan, and B, that the loan is worthwhile and that the asset is worthwhile. To do that, you're going to provide 5 things. These things are, first off, you're going to put in 2 years of tax returns. And by the way, you can use tax returns from that same year. Then you're going to provide 2 bank statements to show that you actually are earning what you claim to be earning per month. You will also need to provide proof of gainful employment. In other words, you have to show that you are in fact working at the place that you say you're working. Next, you're going to need a 720 credit score. Some places will allow you to have as low as a 680 credit score, but I assure you, you want a 720 credit score because the difference can be a 35% down payment if you have a 680, all the way down to a 15 or a 10% down payment if you have a 720. And really, all you have to do to get a 720 is pay off your credit cards so that each credit card is only using between 5 to 10% of the total balance available on that credit card. Remove some of the checks you have on the credit card and maybe add yourself as an authorized user in someone else's account. Just Google authorized user to understand what I'm talking about. Now, when you do all of this, they're going to be looking at something called your debt to income ratio. This is the ratio between how much money you earn per month and how much you're paying in your principal plus interest mortgage payment. So let's look at this a little bit further. If you have a high income, you can generally qualify for a much larger loan because there's more wiggle room in your debt to income ratio. Legally, banks cannot offer loans to people if those loans have monthly mortgage payments that are greater than 43% of the monthly income that you're earning, or in other words, 43% debt to income ratio. So let's say someone is earning $10,000 per month or $120,000 a year. Well, a 43% debt to income ratio means that they cannot have a loan that is greater than $4,300 per month. Or, in other words, over 30 years, that would be a $900,000 loan. Now, banks will also consider car payments and credit card payments. So for most people, that's about 10% of their monthly income. So I tend to recommend people to consider a 33% debt to income ratio because it's more realistic and it's easier to calculate. All you have to do is look at your monthly income and divide it by 3, and now you can generally figure out the monthly payment that you can be making. And if you can figure out the monthly payment that you can be making, you can figure out how much or how big of a loan you can end up qualifying for. So in this case, if we're talking about someone with $10,000 a month of income, a third of it would probably be about $3,300 per month in their mortgage payments, which would qualify you for about a $725,000 mortgage loan. Now, another thing to note is that when you get a construction loan, you have interest-only payments until your construction is finished. And they're all based off of each phase or each draw of the project. Let me explain what that means. Let's say you qualified for this $725,000 construction loan because you make $10,000 a month and you have a 33% debt to income ratio available. Well, in the first phase of the first draw, you're going to buy your land and make an initial deposit to start with construction services. So in this case, you might pay $250,000 for the land and $50,000 for the construction services. In other words, you used up $300,000 out of the total $725,000 that was made available to you in your loan. Well, you're only going to have to pay interest payments on those $300,000. Now let's get to the next phase of the project. In this phase, your materials are sourced and they're cut. So now you are taking out the next bit of your loan, and now your balance is at $550,000 out of the total $725,000. Well, now you're going to be paying interest only on the $550,000. Now we're reaching our final draw, or the last phase, and the materials are delivered, everything's assembled, everything is finished. Now you're going to be using all $725,000 out of the total $725,000. Well, at this point, now you would begin the regular intervals of monthly mortgage payments. So this is a chart that I've made for you that allows you to look at the target loan amount, what the down payment would have to be for that target loan amount or that target budget, what the monthly payment would be for that loan, and what your monthly income would have to be based off of a 33% debt to income ratio on a loan that's at 6%, which is what we're currently seeing. As you can see here, generally speaking, to qualify for enough of a budget to have land and a family compound and off-grid utilities like what I'm talking about here, you're probably going to need a budget of at least $600,000, ideally $750,000. So that means you can expect a monthly payment of somewhere around $3,500, assuming you put in 20% down or $150,000. You would probably need to be making somewhere around $10,500, maybe $11,000 a month, or about $129,000 a year as a business owner in order to qualify for one of these loans and safely be able to say, okay, I've got enough of a budget to have my land, have my home, have an additional dwelling unit, and even get started with my off-grid solar, septic, and wells. That's generally what you need. So again, you can use this chart to figure out what your budget is going to end up being. Remember that financing is the hardest step. Financing a parcel it's basically everything. I mean, once you're approved for financing, you can buy land, you can start your ranch, you can build your home. Everything from this point doesn't require your actual physical input other than just making choices. Choices like how many animals you'd like to raise, or how many homes you'd like to build on your parcel, or what design you'd like for your home. So now that we've gone past the boring part, now we can start getting to the fun part. So you can join our forum, you can schedule a visit, and you can start your own ranch, assuming you followed these steps.
So now that we understand what it takes to find land and close on it, let's talk about what it takes to start your own profitable regenerative farm.
The secret to running a profitable ranch without any extra time or effort is that you have to not try to do everything on your own, but instead hire out experts to help you with every single part of the process. When you do this, we'll be able to show you how to cut equipment costs by 10x, how to place orders on the rarest, most sought after livestock breeds on the market, and even how to save almost 100x on feed costs while also creating the most premium dairy, egg, and meat products that are worth 2 to 3 times more than normal. And by the end of this presentation, you will understand exactly how that's possible. One way that we like to characterize our services is by calling them ranchising. A franchise is a turnkey income-producing microfarm built for families who want freedom without full-time farm work. It's a done-for-you system. There's no building, there's no guessing, and we use rotational grazing to rotate animals across your land to restore your soil and increase yield. All the labor is included, so that means daily care done for you by full-time ranch hands. You don't need any input whatsoever unless you want to be part of it. And so is all the equipment necessary as well. So fencing, shelters, water lines, solar-powered systems, everything that's needed to take care of the animals is already taken care of when you ranchize with us. In addition to all that, we also give you the livestock. So typically, one ranchize, just like a dozen eggs, right? Whenever you say a dozen eggs, we know it's 12 eggs. When we talk about one ranchize, we're talking about the following. We're talking about 1 Jersey dairy cow, 4 Wagyu or Angus beef cows, 3 pigs, typically Iberico pigs, 600 pasture-raised chickens, and 1 upfront payment with no extra out-of-pocket costs, all installed within 180 days from land prep to livestock. It's turnkey and it's on time. You can double up or triple up on ranchises. So if you were to double up, you can just multiply every one of these numbers by 2 or by 3, however many you want on your land. This right here is Lisa. Here she is trying raw milk for the first time. She had never held a chicken in her entire life. She had never really been around cows her entire life. And yet here she is with Marty. Marty is another ranchise owner as well. They're partners. And here they are with sausages from their pork, again, despite them being both business owners and having absolutely no farming experience whatsoever. So again, what is the secret to running a profitable ranch without any extra time or effort? Well, it's that there's a market opportunity because Big Ag is really messing up the lives of ranchers, and we have a great window of opportunity right now to hire out ranchers that are world-class experts. See, Big Ag consists of 4 main meat companies. These companies squeeze ranchers with awful contracts, and these contracts pay about $1.25 per $10 that goes at the grocery store. So when you pay $10 to get a gallon of milk, well, only $1.25 of that is actually going to the farmer. Therefore, because ranchers don't make much, they can't pay much when they want to get help. So in the United States, the average ranch hand makes about the same as a McDonald's employee. And yet, 2 solid ranch hands can manage 500, maybe even 1,000 acres with ease. And often they love the cowboy lifestyle. That's why they do this. And they're not looking for fame. They're not looking even for a crazy amount of money. They're looking for freedom and the chance to share the cowboy lifestyle with others. So that's where we come in. By pulling funds from families, we can offer 2 to 3 times the market pay for elite level ranchers who take care of the livestock, equipment, and processing for you. That is the secret to everything that goes into ranchising. So here's a great example of exactly what I'm talking about. Here's Justin with some of the cowboy crew. Here's his wife, Stephanie. Justin, he doesn't like to brag about himself this way, but Justin is actually an 8th generation farmer. Really think about that. His lineage of farmers goes all the way back to the founding fathers. So when I say it's in his blood and you can't really recreate it or try to compete with that, I'm not kidding around. Like, you can't recreate that. That's an unbelievable thing. So my suggestion to most people is, although it's worthwhile to learn from Justin and adapt into some of the things that he can teach you, it's ridiculous to try to think that you're going to just take an online course or listen to podcasts or watch these other YouTube videos and try to recreate the same results that he's able to get just off of those courses alone. You're better off having him do stuff for you and then help you learn and grow and understand this stuff so that over the course of time, over the next 5, 10, 15 years, you can start understanding this stuff for yourself as well, and so can your children. So now let's talk about how we cut equipment costs by 10x with the franchise program. See, each franchise has a huge sticker price. $100,000. I know it's huge, it's expensive, that's crazy. $100,000, oh my gosh, how could you ever spend that? But I want you to consider that in the farming world, just a tractor is $125,000. You factor in livestock, you factor in a dairy, you factor in equipment, and you could easily run $300,000, and that's not even including the land. You might have another $250,000 just for the land itself. So it might be $550,000 to start up a farm equivalent to what we're able to start with the franchise program. Worse, you also have to figure out maintenance costs, which add up fast, either in time or money. So if you try to go everything alone, you could buy all this stuff, sure. Maybe you take out a ag loan, right, through the USDA, but you're still gonna have to maintain all the stuff, and that takes up a lot of time and effort. And remember, you're a business owner. We don't wanna waste your time. By buying equipment once and using it across ranches, we can afford the best equipment. So we might have, for example, in Little G, we have 40 different parcels. So far, we've got 20 people who've started the franchises. We only need one tractor, and that serves all 20 people. So now we can divide out the costs of all 20 people across the $125,000 for that tractor. And by the way, actually, we have two tractors. Here's a great example of what I'm talking about as well, right? This is the chicken coop research and design project. So we actually spent $150,000 perfecting the chicken coop so that now we have a mobile chicken coop that we can use in Texas, Florida, Tennessee, California, anywhere across the country. And we came to this design that we use now after serious trial and error. Imagine if you as a family would have had to do the same trial and error that we had to do. Again, $150,000 that went into designs that would get blown over in the wind, that simply wouldn't get shipped out, that would ship with missing pieces, that would get completely broken, that would allow foxes to get into, allow coyotes to get into. We had to go through that one by one until we perfected the chicken coop. And now that we perfected the chicken coop, all of our families get to benefit from that experience.
This one's still warm. She just laid it. Behind us are two chicken tractors where our laying hens are housed, and they live every day. We move those tractors across the land. They help us control weeds by eating the seeds and keeping our desirable grasses. You can see a difference between where they haven't been and where they have been. Notice no yellow tops. This is huge, and they help us provide fertility to our soils. On top of all that, we get delicious eggs that we sell at Montgomery Farmers Market every Saturday.
So now let's talk about how we place orders on the rarest, most sought after livestock breeds on the market. If you go the retail route, you're probably going to be limited to what's available online because you probably don't have any relationships with local ranchers, and therefore you're going to be really in a bad position whenever it comes to negotiations. Ultimately, you're going to either find that most of the livestock you want are either non-existent in the market or they're going to be incredibly overpriced. But when you work with ranchers in the know, they can use their local contacts to find incredible deals. And because we're buying in bulk, because we've got the power in numbers, people come to us as well with incredible offers to buy their livestock because they know, hey, I know I should just go to the Axe guys because the Axe guys, they're good for it. They got the money. They can definitely help me out on this deal before my ranch closes down. So here's an example of what springtime looks like on our Texas property, Little G Ranch. You can see all the beautiful animals we got there. We've got over 60 cattle out there. We had over 150 Iberico pigs. We processed them. We have over 30 sheep, over 25 goats, over 2,500 chickens, over 100 ducks, and we just ordered over 150 turkeys. So we even also have horses and dogs as well. You know, having something like this, having all those animals like this, that's what's the beauty of franchising. It's getting to see all these animals interacting with each other. So now let's talk about how we save 100x on feed costs while also creating premium products, which I know sounds too good to be true at first, but if you understand it, you understand exactly why we're able to do this. See, the number one thing that can cause ranchers to burn out is often feed costs. You can have one fluctuation in the market, and that can easily wipe out hundreds of farmers. For example, a series of wildfires in Texas destroyed almost 70% of alfalfa fields in the area, and this raised the prices for alfalfa everywhere else by almost 2x. This means that all the farmers that were reliant on the alfalfa were now basically out of the game, because that was the money that they were going to use to feed their family and to pay for their homes and pay for everything else that they might have going on. But we're able to save and even eliminate most feed costs because we use a rotational grazing system. And the main idea behind the system is that we continuously rotate our herd of cows within each parcel and across each parcel to give an 80-day rest period for the grasses until we come back. So I'll show you exactly what this might mean through these diagrams. All right. So when you see most cattle ranchers, they think that you can only have maybe one cow for every 2 acres. And that's because they generally are continuously grazing their livestock. In other words, they let them go free range. They're out on the pasture and they could just eat whatever they would like. But the problem with that is that cows are going to naturally eat up the areas that have the best grasses, and what was once the best grasses will turn into the worst grasses. So what you can do instead is you can set up simple rotations that allow the cows to eat all the grasses in one area that they might otherwise not have eaten in, and then you rotate them to a new area and allow the grasses to rest. And if you use an intensive system, then it's really just about packing the cows in even more. When you do that, now you really ensure that all the grasses in that area are eaten up before you move on to the next area. So this is another image of what I'm talking about when I say intensive rotational grazing. You can imagine that you're going to be moving the cows from this paddock to this paddock to this paddock to this paddock, and you're letting the grasses grow before you go back to the original paddock. Now, if we look at the progression of grazing and how we've done it, we started out with simply some free range practices because we had just started out, and it was difficult to get fencing up at first. Then we started rotating the cows within parcels. So the idea was each person had their parcel of land, and you'd keep the cows all on that one piece of land, and then you would only rotate that person's cows on that person's parcel, and that's it. But then we realized, wait a minute, we could actually set up a much larger rotational grazing system if we rotated the cows among each parcel. So from parcel 1 to parcel 2 to parcel 3 and so on. The latest development is hyper-intensive grazing within each parcel of land and across parcels to give over 80 days of rest. So if we can imagine this is parcel number 1. In day 1, acre 1 on parcel 1. Then they go on the next day and they're in the next little section within parcel 1. And then the third section, the fourth section, the fifth, and so on and so forth. Now, usually you would just start the rotation again after 10 days. But what we're doing is we're then moving them to another paddock and we're rotating them on that paddock. And then to the next parcel and rotating them there. And so on and so forth until we might even have 80 new sections, meaning that it's been 80 days before we went back to parcel number 1. And when you give that much time, then you're allowing the grasses to grow themselves. And because you're allowing the grasses to grow themselves, there is far more nutrition available. And you can essentially use it as your own hay, and you don't have to pay for anybody else's feed. And on top of that, because you're doing that, you are also making sure that the cows are grass-fed and grass-finished. And this is important when we're talking about dairy and we're talking about meat products, which we'll talk about a little bit later on.
Our grazing results. They've been in this paddock for about 23 hours. That's where they're going next. You can see they've pretty much mowed this all down. If you'll take a look at their manure right here, that's a perfect pile of manure. It's loose, it's got a dimple in the middle. That means the cattle are getting everything they need out of this grass. As you can see right here, they're getting a little restless because they're wanting to move on to the next spot. We'll run some laying hens across this and maybe some sheep depending on our weed load. The cattle won't return to this spot for another 80 days. It'll look more like this over here, maybe even bigger. This is springtime, the grass is growing, and it's a perfect time to be rotating your cows across your pasture.
Now that we've started our farm, let's figure out how to sell the food we've grown on that farm.
One misconception people have is that we're going to have people competing against each other. So you have all these families, they buy land together, and now they all own their own piece of land. And so therefore they must have different ranches. So now they're all competing against each other. That's just not the case whatsoever. And I'd like to show you what our plans are when it comes to selling food. So in order to do this, I'm going to show you our business strategy called the STAR principle. Then I'm going to show you the 3 key market opportunities that we're going to be targeting. And again, they're related to what I was talking about earlier with the rotational grazing. Then we're going to look at one STAR principle opportunity by the numbers. And then we're going to understand how we do our branding, our marketing, our sales, and our distribution. So before we go into all of that, this is going to be a little fun game, okay? Who would you choose if you were a parent and you had a sick child with a stomach ache and you put in Children's Stomach Doctor Miami? Would you choose option A, which has a 4.9 out of 5 with over 1,000 reviews? Would you choose option B, which has a 2.1 out of 5 with only 14 reviews? Or would you choose option C, which has a 3.9 out of 5 and only 15 reviews? I would say that if you're anything like me, it's a no-brainer decision. You're going to go with option A. Like, there's nothing else to even be said here. In fact, it would almost be sickening to you to even consider going to option B or option C. It doesn't even make sense to you why anybody ever would choose these other options. Well, if that's intuitively obvious to you, then congratulations, you now understand the STAR principle, which is how I operate every single one of my businesses. In fact, before there was even Access Centralized Real Estate, my job was I was a marketer and a business consultant, and I'd actually helped create over 20 millionaires using the STAR principle. Then we created Axe, and now Axe is in the top 0.5% of all businesses in the United States after having generated over $15 million in revenue. And I just use the STAR principle in everything. I mean, it simply is how I operate, period. I don't open a business unless I'm going to have a STAR principle business. So Access Centralized Real Estate, the Ranch Hand League, Wanted Raw Foods, Axe Homes, I'm thinking STAR principle, STAR principle, STAR principle, STAR principle, STAR principle every single time. So, okay, so what is the STAR principle and why do I only invest time and energy into STAR principle businesses? Well, it's a very simple criteria. Only invest in businesses that meet the following. Number 1, they are the number 1 in their market niche by sales volume. And number 2, that market niche is growing by 10% per year. If you can meet these 2 criteria, I compare it to being an incredibly good surfer. If you have the skills of Kelly Slater and you put yourself in an incredible area like Pipeline, Hawaii, or some other amazing area, maybe off the coast of Australia, then you can catch the biggest wave. And once you catch the biggest wave, now you can really ride it. What we want to do is we want to develop the skill sets in the team necessary to have the ability to produce a better product than anybody else, and then we want to ride the wave of the market as it propels us forward. This is more important than leadership. This is more important than really any other metric that could exist in a business. These 2 traits really do predict performance more than anything else. So again, it's the STAR principle. The reason why Axe was able to generate over $15 million, still have over 20% margins, which is something that very, very few businesses in the United States are able to have. And it's also what I'm doing with the food brand. So let's go a little bit deeper and let's understand more about how the STAR principle works by understanding what a market niche is and what it means to be number 1. See, a market niche is a new problem that people will pay money to solve. So Earlier, I showed you the example of there are parents who have sick children with stomach aches. They're going to look up Stomach Doctor Miami, right? So if you're in Miami, that's going to be a niche. Now, I like to think of market niches as opportunities to rank competitors differently in one's head. So you might have, in that previous situation, it might be a different list if we say adult stomach doctors in Miami. Well, that changes up everything. We might have a completely different list of doctors in that scenario. So again, think of each market niche as a list of companies in people's heads that refer to who they should go to first in order to solve that problem. If we look at other star principal businesses, we can think of Tesla. So you know it's a star principal business if you say the category and instantly you know who's the top dog in that. So I can say electric vehicles, we know it's Tesla. I can say phones, we know it's iPhone. I can say online shopping store, we know it's Amazon. If we say coffee, we know it's Starbucks. If we say social media, we know it's Facebook. And if we say search engines, we know it's going to be Google or Alpha. Those are all star principal businesses. That's what we want to recreate with our food brand so that we can make money on our franchises. So here are 3 star principal opportunities that we are targeting. The first one is soy-free eggs. There is an egg shortage, and more people realize that soy is not good for them and not good for their hormones. So people are willing to pay an extra $2 to $5 for soy-free eggs. The next one is grass-fed, grass-finished beef. This type of beef has less marbling, which is healthy for some people. It has a distinct flavor. It's very sweet at the very end of it. I love it. And is harder to find because the majority of farmers and ranchers are stuck in the past. And yet the industry has exploded from $17 million in retail sales in 2012 to eventually $180 million in retail sales in 2017 to then $2 billion in 2020 and now $4.5 billion in 2024 for grass-fed, grass-finished beef. Now the last one and most noteworthy one is raw milk. Over 3.5% of the population prefers to drink raw milk because it contains undisturbed bacteria and proteins. Also, raw milk is hard to find and it's difficult because it's illegal in many different places or there might be regulations. So on average, people might drive about 1.5 hours per week to go get the raw milk. And for me, that's a great star principal opportunity because I know, all right, there's a lot of people who want this problem. They definitely will rank competitors differently in their heads because if you're just offering 2% milk or regular milk, then you don't even qualify in their minds. And they've got a huge problem on their hands because it's so difficult to go out and get the raw milk. Go a little bit further. We know that a lot of parents will get raw milk for their children. And that's because there are even studies that show that drinking raw milk lowers your rate of allergies by 2x. And across 8,000 children, it was shown that it lowers the rate of asthma by 2x. So again, parents are willing to pay a premium for their children for this product. So let's look at an example of how I break down markets and look at star principal opportunities within markets. I like to see, hey, is it actually worthwhile to be number one in this area? And what we've strategically done with Axe and using the power of numbers is we've done the research to choose locations where we could really take advantage of the star principal positioning in those areas. So let's look at Montgomery County in Texas, for example. Montgomery County, Texas is a very affluent county. It's also the reddest county in all of Texas. So imagine how red that might be. It's where the richest people live, and you have very nice houses, very nice stores out here in the greater Houston area. Now, the total population for Montgomery County is 711,000 people. If we divide that out by 2.68, which is the average number of people per family, then we're able to figure out that there are 265,000 families in Montgomery County alone. If we use data from Dairy Farmers of America and consider that there's a 3.5% of the population that drinks raw milk, then we could do the math and multiply 265,000 families by 3.5% to figure out that there are 9,275 families in Montgomery County that want to drink raw milk. If these families drink the average amount, which is 2 gallons per family, and each gallon is $20, across 52 weeks, that means that there is a market potential of $2,040 per family. So if we multiply 9,275 families by $2,040, we know that in Montgomery County alone, raw milk represents an $18.92 million opportunity. So what we want to do is position ourselves as the number one in that $18.92 million opportunity. And that's exactly what we did. This is Stephanie. She's our dairy director, and I met her at the Montgomery Farmers Market, and she had the best booth with the best milk, with the most people going over to get the milk. And I kept up conversations with her, found out more about her, and I would just ask her about her business. She would ask about my business as well. And one thing that I found out was that she has a list of buyers who are demanding milk. However, she could not meet that demand because of capital constraints. So I talked through things with her, met up several different times, met up over at Little G, met her husband, Justin, and eventually we realized, hey, you know what? There's a huge opportunity here. I can scratch your back, you can scratch mine. I can help you meet this market demand. We can provide more capital. We can provide more resources so you can have a better dairy facility. You can have more cows. You can have all the things necessary so we can take advantage of this $18.92 million opportunity in Montgomery County alone. And for all of those reasons, when she looked at it, she said, okay, I could either compete against this guy or I could join him and we could skyrocket together. So we decided to join forces and skyrocket together. And that's been fantastic. This is how already I can guarantee star principal positioning, because again, Stephanie was the best in the game in this area. So now let's look at the raw milk market nationwide. Again, we're going to use the same type of mathematics. So there's 340 million Americans, and the average family size is 3.15 people per family, meaning that there's about 108 million families in the United States. If we know that 3.5% of them drink raw milk, that means that there are 3.75 million families in the United States of America that drink raw milk. So 3.75 million families times $2,040 means that the raw milk market in the United States is somewhere around a $7.5 billion opportunity per year. And yet, because of legal regulations, there's nobody in the star principal positioning. Why? Because you cannot cross state lines. You may only have local distribution starting within each state. So what you would have to have national branding positioning and star principal positioning is an opportunity where you have ranches in every single state across the United States. And the last I checked, the only person who's got that as an opportunity is Axe, because of the power in numbers. So if we look at this opportunity for what it is, then if we can capture 10% of the market, just 10% of the market, then that would mean that it's an $800 million per year opportunity on raw milk alone in the United States. Let's say, TJ, I don't believe you. I think you're full of it. I think you're blowing smoke. I think you're 99% wrong. Okay, that's fine. Then this is still an $80 million opportunity. But when we consider star principal positioning, then market leaders are often able to capture about 40% of any markets they're in. If we look at, for example, iPhone, right? iPhones alone take up 40% of the entire cell phone market. If we look at Tesla, Teslas alone take up about 40% of the entire EV market. So in this case, if we're the market leader and we have 40% of the market share, that is a $3 billion opportunity when it comes to just raw milk, which, by the way, serves as the gateway drug to other things such as soy and grass-fed, grass-finished beef. So now let's talk about how we plan to capture this $3 billion market. You need an amazing team of A+ players. You need a brand that people can identify with, a solution the market is craving, better marketing than anyone else, better sales processes than anyone else, and better distribution systems than anyone else. Let's talk about my amazing team of A+ players. You want to find people who've already done what you want to do and made the mistakes that you don't want to have to make. And that's exactly what I've done here. Of course, you want to do this by giving them a better way to do it. So when it comes to Axe, what I have to do as a CEO is create a structure for growth that makes other entrepreneurs say, you know what, I could try to do stuff on my own, or I could join Axe and I can completely outperform anything I would have done in my own business. So we met Stephanie earlier, who I'd said, hey, she'd already done $300,000 on her own, bootstrapping it as a mom, and she was only held back by capital. Let's see, Stephanie, if you can get to 3 million, 4 million, 5 million, 10 million with raw milk. Met Adam. Adam had made $3 million on his own without an Instagram, without Google, without YouTube, just pure word of mouth. And so when we were able to get connected, A, we love working together, but B, we're able to see, hey, wait a minute, if he did all this without Instagram, without social media, what happens when he is working with me and he does know how to do those things? We brought on Alexa, who has, in her own company, helped out bring in $650 million of revenue. And I have Tim as a consultant. So Tim has consulted with companies that have brought in over $1.5 billion. And as I said earlier, you want to find people who've done what you want to do. He helped Borden Chocolates get to $150 million. So he's the exact person to talk to figure out, okay, how do I set up a milk monopoly? So let's talk about what it takes to create a brand that people can identify with. Most people commoditize themselves with poor branding. That means that they offer goods and services that are entirely determined by everybody else. They're just a thing. So, it's one thing to have just eggs. It's another thing entirely to have an eggs brand. A brand is what separates something away from being a commodity. So we want to stand out by having an incredible story associated with our products. In this case, that means targeting what people want, recognizing the key problems that they face, recognizing the villains in their lives, the fears in their lives, the anxieties in their lives, and providing a solution that's 10 times better than anything else they can find in the market. Our brand is that reputation, that status that people have in their heads, in their list, for who to go to solve certain problems. And we want to make our customers feel proud for making the choice to buy from us. And that's exactly the type of mindset that went into creating Wanted Raw Foods. We call Wanted Raw Foods wanted because it's making fun of people who say that selling raw milk is illegal. And that attitude right there, that kind of rebellious attitude that also looks at things as an underground movement, that is what is part of the special sauce in the Wanted Raw Foods branding.
What if the world's tastiest food was also the healthiest? That's what happens when you eat food grown the way God intended. No GMOs, no soy, no concrete. Just real food grown on real grasses by real cowboys. This is one of our freezers at Little G Ranch. All these meats come from pasture-raised livestock, grass-fed Angus and Wagyu beef, pasture-raised chickens, and authentic Iberico pigs. With free nationwide shipping available. Comment the word king down below to get the Feast of Kings.
So now let's talk about what it means to create a solution that the market is craving. See, people drive 45 minutes each way to go pick up their raw milk because it's that hard to find. And often the only option they have is to go to farmers markets that are only open on Saturdays and only at a certain time, maybe between 9 a.m. to 12 a.m. This alienates people who are simply too busy to go pick up raw milk every weekend. I know because I'm one of those people. I'm on property visits on Saturdays. I don't have the ability to go to the farmer's market on Saturdays to pick up raw milk, even though I love raw milk. So what is a solution I could give to those people? Something simple. Well, I could eliminate the driving time entirely. I could literally deliver raw milk directly to their door, or I could offer to have them pick it up whenever they want at a store that is open on days alternative to the farmer's market. So rather than trying to compete with the farmer's market that is already in number one position, let me compete away from the farmer's market on every one of the other days, and I'll become number one on every one of the other days. This is an example of what I'm talking about when it comes to delivery. This is not CGI. This is an actual photo taken in my front yard of our milk truck, the Wanted Raw Foods, raw milk, meat, and eggs truck. So now let's talk about what it takes to have better marketing than anyone else. So one saying by Russell Brunson that really captures this idea is that the business who spends more per customer wins. At the end of the day, no matter what it is that's going on with their marketing, if you spend more to acquire customers and you consider your marketing to not just be advertising, but be packaging, be customer service, be strategy, be storytelling, be all these other things, listening to the customers, you're going to beat the other guys. We can easily spend at Axe $5,000 to $10,000 per month on video production, no problem. We have members on staff that are fully there for nothing other than just video production and editing, and they are able to go work with our ranchers and go work with our Wanted Raw Foods team to figure out how to create new videos. We can also leverage our existing 240,000 follower Instagram network to push new ideas out faster. So when you combine that with marketing that's fresh and crisp and different, then all of a sudden you are in a much better position to get word out there than most other farmers. And that means you get thousands of views completely for free without even having to spend money on advertising. You can see here Justin, me, and Adam all creating videos for different purposes that get people in to start buying Wanted Raw Foods. So we've got videos educating people on what healthy cows and healthy land should look like. We've got videos explaining to people how to raise hens. We've got videos that encourage our buyers to start leaving testimonials and start creating their own new videos and their own new content. All these different strategies build trust in our network.
What if the world's tastiest food was also the healthiest? That's what happens when you eat food grown the way God intended. No GMOs, no soy, no concrete. Just real food grown on real grasses by real cowboys. This is one of our freezers at Little G Ranch. All these meats come from pasture-raised livestock, grass-fed Angus and Wagyu beef, pasture-raised chickens, and authentic Iberico pigs. With free nationwide shipping available. Comment the word king down below to get the Feast of Kings.
This is what comes in the Feast of Kings. Applewood smoked bacon, grass-fed and grass-finished ground beef, Iberico pork snack sticks, bone-in pork chops, whole pasture-raised chicken, grass-fed and grass-finished bone-in ribeye, ground pork from our forested pigs, and a New York strip steak.
So comment the word king down below to try the Feast of Kings.
So now let's talk about having an easier sales system than anyone else. Most farmers used old systems or difficult systems because they don't know any better when it comes to sales. So for example, you try to pick up the meat, and now you have to go through the rigmarole of filling out a specific type of list, and it's very difficult, and you got to go to certain pickup days. Again, there's just a lot of friction in the sales process of most of the smaller farmers that I've seen out there. We, however, keep track of sales using Shopify, where we can also keep track of the behaviors of individuals and follow up with customers if they don't take action. We also have in-person locations that allow people to show up in person to have that personal touch. So an example of what I'm talking about is our website. You can see our website. This is a premium designed website that uses Shopify, and this website allows us to track inventory, track sales, track analytics, and track customer behaviors in real time. Here's a preview of our new in-person location. Not only do we have the building and the warehouse you see there, we also have the entire field to create our own farmers market. When we chose this location, we chose a spot that was immediately outside of the coffee shops and flower shops that we know the target market wants to go to. And now by positioning ourselves here, every single time those customers goes to get their coffee, they see this building and they want to come over to us and go try out our raw meat, milk, and eggs because it's more convenient than having to show up on Saturdays to go pick those things up. So now let's talk about distribution. The last piece of the puzzle is distribution. As boring as it might sound, distribution is one of, if not the most important part of the process, because if it is done right, it allows scalability, and if it is not done right, it creates an absolute nightmare. Just think about Amazon for proof of what I'm talking about. They literally spent billions perfecting their distribution system, and they were pre-revenue for over 25 years because Mr. Bezos would take every single dollar and reinvest it into the Prime system, making it so that they could deliver stuff better and faster and better and faster and better and faster. That's because he knew that you could do everything else right. You could have the best website and the best products and the best sales system and the best people and the best branding and the best messaging. But if you mess things up on the distribution system, especially when we're talking about food, then you will lose customers. So that's why we've teamed up with Foresight Solutions to help us create premium boxes that take advantage of overnight shipping. And to really emphasize how premium these boxes are, we've had customers literally unpack the boxes and frame them in their house because they've seen them as a collectible item that they wanted to cherish in the future. I mean, I've looked at Apple boxes. I know the Apple boxes are really cool. There's a reason they're so cool. It's because it adds to the premium effect of it. But I've never seen someone frame an Apple box, and yet they're framing our boxes of food.
Now that we've started our farm and started selling food, let's talk about how to build the off-grid family compound of our dreams.
There are a few things we need to understand in order to design and build our home. First, how to visualize your parcel layout. Next, how to save 90 to 99% on architectural fees for your actual home build. Next, we're going to understand how to streamline the build process using pre-cut materials. And then we're going to figure out how to ensure that homes are built on time and on budget. Lastly, we'll talk about off-grid water, off-grid septic, and off-grid solar. So let's begin. The number one problem people face when building out their parcel is blindness. They have no ability to visualize the layout for their parcel, so they make unwise decisions. I see it every single day. People look at their land and it's a blank canvas and they're like, I don't know what to do with it. I just don't know. I just can't figure it out. I don't know. I can't visualize the whole thing. I need a visual. I need some type of visual to understand what I'm going to do with it. The key to getting a visual is to get a landscape architect. This is Connor from Ecclesia Designs. He's our preferred landscape architect. And one of the really cool things about Axe is that every single time you close on a parcel of land with us, we allow you to get services from Connor completely for free to figure out the layout for your parcel. Connor is a top dog who has helped out with huge developments, multi-million dollar developments, and it would cost tens of thousands of dollars for him to sit down with you and figure out your landscape. But we've covered the tab because of the power in numbers and ensure that you can get visualization help with Connor. So what's going to happen when you use Connor's services and you sit down with him to figure out your parcel design? Well, first off, he's going to talk to you about your end goals and your life plan. Then he's going to figure out your style, and then he's going to help you reverse engineer how to get to those end goals in your style. Here's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. This is a real life example of one of Connor's parcel designs there at Little G Ranch. This family wanted a main home for themselves as well as Airbnbs for income generation. They wanted a pond, and they wanted an area for their own terraced food forests. Well, Connor was able to look at the layout of the land and figure out exactly how to implement all these things for the family. And they were like, oh my goodness, I would never figure this out, but now that I see it, it is completely and totally obvious. Thank you, Connor, for helping me out with my landscape architecture. All right, so one question that a landscape architect can also help you out, figure out is how much land you need for your franchise and what you're going to dedicate for your franchise. Because again, you're going to have 10 acres of land, maybe even more, and you need to figure out how much you're going to use for pasture, how much you're going to use for living. Now, I'll tell you the straight up answer, which is this. If you're going to have a franchise, you must dedicate at least 5 acres for that franchise, at least 50% of it. That's what it's going to be. So if you have 10 acres of land, you need at least 5 acres for your franchise just to be able to franchise. Now, with that being the case, you'd be surprised at how much land you can actually use for your pastures and how little land you actually need for your livable space. Even if you have a 10,000 square foot home, which is a mega mansion, and you put a few Airbnbs and they're 1,000 square feet each, you are realistically not going to actually take up more than about 2 acres of land in your living space. So whatever amount of land you might have, whether it's 5 acres or 10 acres or 20 acres, if you use the 80-20 rule, you can pretty accurately figure out how much space you're going to use for yourself versus how much space you'll have available for animals. The good news about this is that if you have more space available for animals, guess what? You're going to make more money, and that's pretty nice to have. All right, so now let's talk about how you can save 90 to 99% on architectural fees. See, if you have a custom built home, the architecture for that home can take 6 to 9 months of time, and it can take hundreds of thousands of dollars. I know that for me, for this home build that you actually see right here, this is a 4-unit family compound that's about 5,000 square feet and it spans 8,000 square feet. The architectural fees for this design is about $150,000. But it was worth it. It was, I got everything like the layout, I got the rooms, I got the kitchens. It's got a hibachi kitchen, it's got a wellness suite with a wet room, with baths, with a sauna. It's got red light chambers. It's got all these different things. It's amazing. But again, most people cannot actually afford that. So what is the secret here? Well, the key is using pre-selected and pre-made designs. It saves you more time, money, and effort because the majority of work has already been done. So for example, you can use my design and you don't have to pay nearly as much. You simply have to pay for the engineering to ensure that my design is fit appropriately to your parcel. I know because I've already seen it happen. My design was originally meant for Texas, but we've got a gentleman who's taken the same design, essentially flipping it. He's using a few of the modules, just 1 or 2 of the modules. He's adding in some other modules, and it's not nearly the same cost as what I'd paid for him to be able to take advantage of it. In addition to that, you can use some of our pre-selected designs that go beyond the design that was already made for myself. So here's some examples of what I'm talking about. These come from advancedhouseplans.com. We highly recommend that you just use some of these designs that we picked out from Advanced House Plans because they have the pricing already built into them. They already have the engineering already built into them. Here's another example of a design. Here's another one. And now let's talk about how we streamline the process through companies such as Whisper Creek Homes. We can streamline the home build process through pre-cutting and pre-assembly. Now, this is very different from pre-made modules, and this is different from a custom home build and a stick build. What I'm talking about is using very heavy timber or cold formed steel that is cut out in a factory and numbered 1 by 1 and then shipped to the individual parcel. Again, they will literally cut it, number it, and pre-assemble sections of your home before they ever arrive on the parcel. Once they do arrive on the parcel, it's a matter of connecting the pieces according to their number. So here you can see an example of what I'm talking about when I say the pre-cutting process. They literally take huge logs of timber and they cut each log of timber down to the specifications that are necessary for your individual home.
Another project that we worked on that ended up being pretty interesting was we had this production company called Fire and Ice approach us saying that they wanted us to build some walls that would look like full log walls so that they could use them for sets for this show that they were developing called Yellowstone, the Yellowstone series. And they needed something that they could put in their studio in Park City, and that would give that full look and feel, and also needed some retrofitting of the railing and everything at the main ranch, which is just down the road from where we're at, to install that and give it a little bit of a different look. So my crew had the opportunity to go up and get hands-on and work on installing that, and then it was pretty amazing. And even to this day, it's pretty amazing to see one of the most famous log cabins now out there, the Denton House. Was a project that we worked on, and it's something that my entire crew is very, very proud of.
So how can we ensure that homes are built on time and on budget? It's through the planning. When you have bad planning, you have blown budgets and wasted time. For example, you can have a lot of something called change orders. Change orders are when you make a mistake and you make a change, you order a change in the middle of the home build. The problem with that is that you're going to be paying 2 to 3x because you already paid for the materials. Now you have to pay for the installation of those materials, then pay for the removal of those materials. Then you have to pay for new parts. You have to wait for the new parts. Then you have to pay for adding in the new parts. And by the time you've done that, again, it's going to be two to three times the cost. What we want to do is we want to have crews that remain on site and only focus on our properties so that we do not have change orders. And we can do that by making sure to not start until everything necessary for our home build is present on site and on time. So let's talk about, for example, not only the materials that are there for the actual home build, but the materials that are involved in utilities. We will go out of our way to get bulk deals on water facilities. For most people, the main source of off-grid water is going to be well systems, and we vet each property to make sure that there's plenty of water available locally through wells. But another option is rain catchment systems. You can actually get paid to install some of these in some places. So this is what I mean when I talk about digging wells and the fact that we could figure out how deep we need to dig a well. When you go online to things like Land ID, when we're vetting properties, we're able to see what other wells in the area were done as, how far deep they had to go to make those wells. We can also see the elevation, and we can see some of the nuances that might go onto it. By averaging out the data from others' wells, you can get a solid idea for how deep your own wells might go. And again, we can coordinate group deals for wells that put us at the front of the line. I think about in Texas, for example, to get the local well company to come in and build a well for you would take at least 11 months because there is so much demand for people who want to dig a well. Well, what we were able to do was gather up about 12 of our buyers and start the process of negotiating a bulk deal. Not only is this cheaper for everybody, but for the wells company, they were happy to do the bulk deal because it means that they don't have to be driving back and forth everywhere, lugging equipment in order to get deals done. So here's another example of what I'm talking about here. This is a rain catchment system, and this is not an Axe property owner, but it's a great video that demonstrates what a rain catchment system might look like. Here you can see them adding in 2,500 gallon tanks, and these tanks, when you combine them, they can combine to have over 5,000 gallons that you can use for irrigation on your fields, or you can filter the water and use it for showers, use it for cooking, use it for cleaning, use it for anything that you might have. I don't think enough people really consider the benefits of rain catchment systems, but they are very, very nice passive systems.
By far, this water harvesting system is the largest project we have done to date. Expert gutter guys gave us the means to direct the water, but it had to go somewhere. Enter stage left, the Shamu-sized water tanks. 2 of them. These are 2,500 gallon tanks totaling a capacity to hold 5,000 gallons of rainwater right here on our property. And would you believe that we've actually filled them up? We built a simple gravel foundation for the tanks and hired the help of our permaculture designer friend Pete from Drought Proof Texas to come out and help put the fittings together and make sure that we capture all the water possible from our massive roof. We could add an additional filter to make this potable and use it in our home. But for now, this water system goes to watering our garden and our animals.
All right, so now let's talk about septic systems. Conventional septic is disgusting. It also requires a ton of permitting. We, however, emphasize the usage of something called the sludge hammer septic system to remove waste and reapply water into soils. These systems require less permitting, they prevent disgusting runoff issues, and they contribute to better soils overall. So here's an example of how the sludge hammer works. You have anaerobic bacteria, this is the nasty stuff, and you have aerobic bacteria that is able to digest the nasty stuff. You simply take a normal septic tank and then you install the sludge hammer system into the septic tank with a few little valves to allow air in and out. When you have the valves that allow the air to gas out and you use the bacteria in the sludge hammer septic system, the bacteria start eating away at all of the anaerobic substances that are still in there. And by eating away at all of those nasty things, it turns the water into much cleaner water. What you then do is you actually seep the water out into the other fields, and this provides very nutritious waters for whatever plants you might be growing. So when we see the installation of sludge hammer systems, we can see superfruit. Like for example, this is a pumpkin that is grown in a field where there was a sludge hammer septic system that processed out a lot of the other biomaterials and seeped it out into the field.
The sludge hammer system changes the biology inside your tank into an aerobic bacteria to actively digest the solids in your tank. Here's how our system works. First, we install the Sludge Hammer aerobic bacterial generator directly into your septic tank, adding septic risers for easy access if not already installed. Next, an air pump is installed inside a weatherproof housing and PVC air lines are connected to the unit. The air pump supplies the aerobic bacteria with the oxygen needed to thrive. Finally, the proprietary Sludge Hammer bacterial blend is added, which promotes a thriving biological environment that digests solid waste and leaves behind clear, clean, nutrient-rich wastewater. The bacteria in the purified wastewater remains at work as it travels through the system, where it has the ability to reverse biomat buildup and restore your drain field.
Jimmy Spencer here at Pond Hill Farm, and we're pretty excited to be talking about pumpkins. And one of the reasons for the success of the pumpkins this year is that we're growing them on a subsurface drip system, which was actually designed by Sledgehammer Wastewater Treatment Systems. And we had a problem here, which was that our septic field was undersized and oversaturated. So Sledgehammer design team came out. We now have a system that we can reclaim the water, purify it, and then reuse it. So we're growing pumpkins on a subsurface drip system here. And instead of putting that wastewater directly back into groundwater, we're able to put it into surface water where the pumpkins can grow on it.
When we do have the treatment provided by the Sledgehammer, it opens up doors for alternative disposal methods like what Jimmy's used here, which is subsurface drip irrigation. We want to pull a sample here and show you guys how environmentally safe and clean and clear this effluent is. No smells, no solids, and again, very nutrient rich. And that gives us the opportunity to reclaim this and use it in an environmental way at the farm to supply the pumpkin patch with a beautiful, nutrient rich, clean, clear, fertigated, irrigated discharge. We take all of that highly treated wastewater provided by the Sledgehammer Advanced Treatment Systems and deliver that up to an alternative disposal method that we're very fond of called subsurface drip irrigation. And that is actually only about 8 to 10 inches down from the grade of the ground. So we pressurize the treated wastewater from a pump station into that subsurface drip that's 8 to 10 inches deep. It's in the root zone of the competition pumpkin patch, and those pumpkins are able to then draw in that highly treated effluent that is super nutrient rich, as we call it, fertigation, and that gives them just everything they need to get absolutely massive. And as the owners of the farm have said, they have never seen pumpkins this big in the history of Pond Hill Farms. And again, we take that high strength, conventional, nasty wastewater and make it into something that looks as clean and clear as a glass of water. No smells, no solids, sustainable, reclaimable, and environmentally safe.
The next thing to talk about is off-grid solar. Only 7% of all homes in the United States of America have solar units on their home, but out of that, only 10% are completely off the grid. So only 0.7% of the population. So what that means is that most people, when they think of solar, they either are kind of weirded out by it or they're scared of it, but it's really because with 99.3% accuracy, they've never seen it before in their lives. Again, the major difference here that you have to understand is when you see most solar units, again, 90% of the solar units that are out there, those are retrofitted. Those are for normal ticky-tacky homes that never intended for solar. They just only happened to get solar. When you instead mindfully develop a property with solar in mind and you use alternative systems to provide heat, then yes, solar is completely enough to have a very nice lifestyle. You can have just as many TVs, you can have hair dryers, you can have hot tubs, you can have everything you need. There are a few core components to an off-grid solar system. You've got the panels for the solar, you got the controller, you got the inverter that takes the type of electricity and turns it into something usable, and you've got a battery bank. These are what constitute a solar system. Now, the other things that you can have are a backup generator and a propane tank. These are going to be essential as well to ensure that you are good for electricity no matter what might happen. You can take the solar panels and you can create huge carports that are nice for your cars, or you could create little garden areas with the solar panels that are very nice to grow and graze, to grow food on and to graze animals right through. If we look at how batteries have improved, the batteries have not only gotten better, we've actually completely switched the entire chemistry of it. So before, batteries in 2017 used to be lead acid batteries, but now we use lithium in order to store energy. So you can see the difference between 2017 and 2024. We're constantly improving on solar technologies. So with that being the case, let's talk about what the timeline looks like for ordering a design, getting materials pre-cut, assembling your home, installing utilities, and finally moving in. Assuming you've gotten approved for financing, you can get started with your first draw in a process that takes about 2 to 3 weeks. The first draw is going to be $50,000 up front. And that locks you into a cohort. In other words, it locks you into any of the bulk deals that we have that are coming up at that moment. And it starts the process for design and engineering for that individual home to ensure that it fits for your parcel. And lastly, again, it allows you to schedule production for the pre-cutting of materials. Then in the next 6 to 8 weeks, you have the next draw of 50% as production starts, materials get cut, and the exteriors and finishes for your home get ordered. The reason we want to order the finishes and exteriors for your home at the same time as us doing all the cutting of the materials is so that by the time the materials get delivered to your parcel, you also have all the interiors and exteriors delivered to your parcel as well. In doing so, you do not have to waste time waiting for new things to come in. So now that all the materials are delivered, you're going to have you're going to use about 90% of your balance on the loan. And at this point, it's going to take another 6 to 8 weeks as all the materials are delivered, the home is assembled, and all the interior and exterior finishes get applied. Once those get applied, there's going to be a few inspections for your home, and then you'll be able to close and move in on your home. 30 days after the close of the home, after there's been a final home inspection, after you truly love the work that's been done for your home, that is when there is a fourth and final draw to bring the loan all the way to 100%. So if we review it, it's $50,000 up front as the first draw through that loan. Then you're going to get all the way up to the 50% mark on whatever balance you might have. So if you're approved for $750,000, it's $50,000 is going to be the first little draw. Then we're going to get it all the way to $365,000 used up out of your balance. Then we're going to take it to 90% of the loan being used in order to finish up the entire home build. And that last little 10% doesn't get billed out until the work has been verified, the work has been improved, you've already closed, and you've already moved in to your beautiful new family compound home. And that's it. That is literally the exact strategy. That is the completed roadmap for buying land, starting a ranch, selling food on that ranch, and building an off-grid family compound without quitting your business, becoming a full-time farmer, or spending $5 million trying to do it all on your own. With that being the case, here are your next steps. Number one, join our Mighty Network. Join our forum so you can take our other courses and you can find out more about this process. Number 2, schedule a property visit. The reason it's so important to schedule a property visit is because your life will change when you see everything with your own eyes. Even if you're a person who says, you know what, TJ, I love this, I get it, I want to move forward already, seeing things in person is what really anchors it in reality. And that moment when you realize what land can actually look like, that is the moment that your life will completely change. After you have gone on a property visit, get pre-approved. You need to be pre-approved in order to go under contract on your land. From there, choose a parcel and place a 1% earnest money deposit to get started with the real estate process. From there, it's a completely normal close, just like any other real estate transaction. Okay, so let's finish up by answering a few questions about the lifestyle offered in everything that I'm talking about. The lifestyle through Access Centralized Real Estate, the lifestyle with the Ranch Hand League, the lifestyle in general at any one of our properties. So the first question that I get a lot is, okay, TJ, I get all this, but be honest with me. Are you guys secretly a cult? And I get it. I get why. According to all typical standards, my ideas are certainly out there. You know, I encourage people to have home births and to go live off grid. But no, we are not a cult. We're a decentralized real estate company that helps families reclaim self-sufficiency. And we don't have any religious requirements. We don't have any specific meeting requirements. We don't ostracize people. We don't have any of the things that are necessary to become a cult. In fact, I did a whole study. I used ChatGPT. I was curious. I was like, all right, can you list out what are the top traits of what cults are? And out of a list of 32 traits, overwhelmingly, when I read out the whole list, I started laughing because I was like, man, like it's literally couldn't be further than everything that we're building out. Again, we don't require you to change your beliefs. We actually want to help you live them out by living more freely. The one thing that we do believe is yes, it is important to move off grid. And yes, it is because times are changing in our world. Again, the whole point is that we found a way to help you leverage the power of numbers without having to actually give up your autonomy. That is the real technology found in Axe. So you can't really understand Axe until you understand that one fact. So where the government might call us radical for going off grid and building a life around faith and family and food security, honestly, that's fine. If anybody wants to label me as an extremist because of that, then whatever. I'll wear that label proudly. Is Axe Christian only? I have a photo of Chick-fil-A here for my answer because the answer is no. Everyone is welcome, but we don't hide who we are. Our values are openly faith-based and they are rooted in biblical stewardship, family, and sovereignty, but we do not have any religious requirements. You do not have to attend a specific service. You do not have to participate in religious activities. Ultimately, the reason I show this Chick-fil-A image here is because asking me if you have to be a Christian to buy from Axe is like asking me if you have to be a Christian to buy from Chick-fil-A. We all know that Chick-fil-A is a Christian-run company. They're not open on Sundays, but it's not like they're going to ask you what denomination you are if you go and try to get their chicken nuggets. What kind of people buy into Axe? We have entrepreneurs, doctors, veterans, tradesmen, single moms, homeschool families. Honestly, the biggest things that I've noticed about them is they're very successful people. They're very smart people, like insanely smart people compared to the average population, very well read. And the unifying trait is that they're done with the system and they're ready for sovereignty. How big are the parcels? How much can I own? Most of our parcels are 10 to 15 acres with a few larger ones by request. We also have in our Tennessee property and our Costa Rica properties for the first time ever 5-acre parcels, but we don't go lower than 5 acres. The reason for that is because we want to make sure there's enough space for homes, livestock, gardens, and wide open spaces. But again, you're not limited to how much land you can buy, you other than your own money. So you can buy as much land as you can afford. So don't feel like because we have 5-acre parcels, you're only stuck with 5 acres. You can have 5, 10, 15, 20. You can have 40 acres if you want. You just have to be able to afford it. Can I pass my ranch down to my kids? Yeah, that's the whole point. I mean, this is your land with full deed ownership and generational impact in mind. It's meant to outlive you. In fact, when I look at normal people's homes, people die and they just get sold off immediately. With Axe, however, your children are going to actually cherish it. They're going to actually value it, and they're not going to just sell it off immediately like that. What if you're not ready yet? What can you do? Well, you can join the Mighty Network and you'll get first access to new properties, and you can stay in the loop to get your finances or your timing aligned. You can also see the proof in everything that we're doing from updates that we make. Do you need special permits to build? In most cases, we choose counties with permit exemptions and off-grid flexibility to keep the red tape low. For example, in Grapeland, Texas, where our first property is, Little G Ranch, I'm not kidding around. I'm seriously not kidding around. There are literally no building restrictions. One time we had our architect, Zach, when he was starting my home build, he called up the local county to ask them about who he can talk to for building codes and building permits. And the lady on the line, she was like, "Oh, honey, bless your heart. There's no building permits out here. You could build a skyscraper next to a mud hut and it'd be a-okay out here." So that's what we typically look for, and that's what we target. But for any red tape that does exist, we will help you navigate it. And that's part of the reason that we created Axe Homes and Construction the way we did. Can I rent my land or use it for Airbnb? Yes, many of our buyers intend to use a portion of their land for short-term stays, retreats, or passive income. I highly recommend it. With that said, we do ask for people to actually intend to live on their properties as well. So if you're only just an investor, that's it, nothing else, then either A, maybe this isn't the right opportunity for you, unless B, you are an archangel. If you're an archangel, which is someone who's willing to cut a paycheck for more than $1 million, then you are entitled to, for every dollar you put in, it would be $2.2 out. And in that case, you can perfectly well be an investor. Is there an HOA? No, there is no HOA. There's no HOA. I hate HOAs. I also hate HOA fees. I really can't stand them. I've got nothing good to say about HOAs. With that being said, we do have deed restrictions. And we'll talk about what those deed restrictions are. The deed restrictions can be found on our website. Literally, you click menus, it says deed restrictions, and every single one of our deed restrictions ties into natural law. In other words, I could show it actually causes harm to a person or is a form of theft. And so here are a few examples of our deed restrictions. So we ask for no spray chemicals such as Roundup, no building huge multifamily complexes. You can only have up to 3 Airbnb listings or else it's going to saturate the market. And we also ask for no RV parks, because RV parks do lower the value of the land for everybody else and make it so that other people now cannot create the things that they wanted to create. Lastly, we do ask people to build at least 1,800 square feet of conditioned space and to just have plans and get started with those plans within 3 years. Even if it's you build 1,200 square feet in one house and then 600 square feet in the next one, that's fine because it adds up to 1,800 square feet. The point is we just want you building at least 1,800 square feet of conditioned space. Or else what people will do is they'll just buy land and they'll procrastinate. They won't even build anything. Can you shoot guns? Can you hunt? Can you fish? The answer is a resounding yes. And for proof of that, you can see this video right here, and you can see one of our property owners shooting on his property. This is totally okay. This is totally fine by us for you to be shooting and hunting on your property. That is completely and totally a-okay. Do I have to farm the land myself? No, you don't. Our ranchise system is built so you own the food, but the ranch hands do all the labor. You're the steward and investor, not the daily operator. How much does it cost? Well, each parcel is around $250 to $275,000 for 10 acres of land. A ranchise is an additional about $100,000. Our homes are custom, are not exactly fully custom, but we've saved you about 90 to 99% on design and streamlined it so that you can keep on time and keep on budget. Overall, I would say that a solid ranch costs somewhere along the lines of $850,000. So between $750,000 to $850,000, that is the sweet spot for you to be able to have your own land, have a home, perhaps have an Airbnb unit as well, or an additional dwelling unit, and even start your own franchise. Less than that, I don't want to make a promise to you that isn't realistic. Do we offer financing? We do not directly offer financing, but instead we use the power of numbers to strong arm banks into favorable terms. Many of our buyers get in with 10 to 20% down loans versus the usual 30 to 50% found for off-grid land everywhere else. Can you visit the land first? Yes, we actually host ranch visits and we welcome serious buyers to tour our properties privately, but you must produce proof of funds or pre-approval if you want one of those private tours. You can also join our Mighty Network to see video walkthroughs, maps, and drone footage. Do you have to move right away? No, you can reserve land now, lock in pricing, and build when the time is right. Many families that join us treat their property as a second home or a vacation home or a future generational site, and they take their time. They usually might rent a home in between, or they might relax and kind of just chill out until they finalize their home build, and then they plan to move out to their parcel full time. Can you build multiple homes? Yes. Our parcels fully support family compounds. By the way, when you say family compounds, you don't need a family to have a family compound. It could be for friends. It could be for employees, for all I care. But the term for it is family compound when you have multiple different homes on one parcel of land. Again, many of our buyers plan for 2 or more homes, some for their parents, for their kids, or some of it for close friends. What's included in a franchise? The same way that you might have a dozen eggs, we see it as a unit. So it's typically 1 Jersey dairy cow, 4 Wagyu or Angus beef cows, 3 pigs, 600 pasture-raised chickens, fencing, shelters, water lines, solar powered systems for the maintenance of the animals, and daily care by the trained ranch hands installed within 180 days, fully turnkey. Can I really make money from the land? And if so, how much? Yes, you really can make money from your land. Our model is built to help you sell raw milk, meat, and eggs. You can potentially list on Airbnb or use land for events or retreats, and you can benefit from the other businesses that can stem off of the Axe community. How much can a franchise make and how fast? I like to tell people, hey, don't even expect $1 for the first 6 months. Just don't even expect even a single dollar for the first 6 months. We're getting things up and running. We have to hire the ranch hands. We have to get the animals in. There's fluctuations in the market. We're going to make a wise decision. Really, I would budget out about 1.5 years to start capture the market and really have a significant income in. Our goal, not a guarantee, but our goal is for each franchise unit to earn about $3,500 per month or about $42,000 per year per franchise. So you can multiply that by however many franchises you might have. Again, think of it like a dozen eggs. So just multiply it. If it's 1 or 2 or 3, you can figure out the take home of $42,000 per year as that goal. Is this legal? Yes, absolutely. Everything we do it complies with subdivision and agricultural laws in each state. We're just incredibly good at figuring out our ways to navigate through the laws and be strategic in our choices for individual pieces of land. What if I don't know anything about land or livestock? That's the point of Axe. We've created a plug and play system so you don't need experience. We've already made the mistakes so that you don't have to. Do I have to franchise? 99% of the people who join Axe want to start their own franchise. It's like asking me, if I buy a Corvette, do I have to drive it fast? You don't have to drive it fast. I just don't understand why you would buy a Corvette. We don't force you to have a franchise if you don't want one. Every parcel is yours. It's private. It's sovereign. But again, most families, they want a franchise. What if I want to farm it myself? You can go for it. We'll still install the systems and train you if you'd like. You can be as hands-on or hands-off as you'd like with your franchise. What states do you operate in? Well, right now, at the time of this recording, we're in Texas, Florida, Tennessee, and California, but soon we'll be in Montana, Idaho, North Carolina, Virginia, Hawaii, Costa Rica, and even Italy. And after that, we plan to expand to every single state in the United States of America. Can I live off-grid full-time? Yes, that's exactly what Axe is built for. Solar, water, septic, and food systems. Many families, they plan to live on their land 365 days a year once they've transitioned onto it. How long does it take from purchase to move in? Well, it depends on the build, but a typical timeline is, it might take 180 days to get the franchise. The home, it varies by the design, but it could be 6 to 12 months. And the land ownership, that can happen much faster. I mean, assuming you get proof of funds and you get under contract, you can be the owner of land in a month. How do I get approved for a loan? Again, you're gonna need 720 credit score ideally. Minimum is 680, but I wouldn't recommend it. You're gonna need a 43% debt to income ratio, and you're gonna prove that with 2 years of tax returns, 2 bank statements, proof of employment. And if you can meet these 2 requirements, if you can have a 720 credit score and you can be below that 43% debt to income ratio, then you can be successful. And again, this is the hardest part of the process. Everything else is easier from here. So here's the next steps. Join the Mighty Network, schedule a property visit, get pre-approved, and choose your parcel. If you can follow on those steps, then you as a business owner can successfully buy land and build a regenerative family compound for your family without any extra time or experience in 2025 and beyond. With that being the case, thank you very much.